I'm excited this morning because I've just been invited to Johannesburg for dance, for conversation, for food, for everything. So, hey, Audrey, welcome to Leaders Who Care series. It's great to see you.
Thank you, Matt. Always a pleasure, and I'm waiting for you to land.
Thanks, Dan. I can't wait. I'm ready. Let me tell you. Thanks to Rebecca, who had introduced us from World Bank. I really appreciate that. And I know I talked about it a little bit before, but I love your necklace. Love your necklace. Could you tell everybody what you told me, what it's about?
Well, I'm very proudly African, first of all, very Pan-African. So it's actually the same beading that the Masai Mara use in Kenya. And typically you'd find that as a complete a necklace on its own. So, you know, the elements of culture and rituals and just being beautifully expressing who I am and where I come from is always what I try to do as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I actually had a conversation with somebody also about names, and I'm thinking of doing a story on this or something about names and how great it is to have different names and the way they're pronounced and everything, because it shows culture, tradition, you know, everything. So it's Audrey Mothupi, which I love. Almost, you know, not even as hard as Sadovnik. It's actually easier even than Sadovnik, my last name. So anyways, welcome. Super glad to have you on this Leaders Who Care series. And best place to start is if you could introduce yourself semi-formally, a little bit about your background before we get into it more, and then we'll chat.
So I love to say, first and foremost, I am the Chief Hassling Officer of SystemLogic, because, you know, every day is a good hassle to change the world. But if I describe myself, who I am and what I'm about, it's really about, I'm here to be of service to others. And a lot of the times we all embark on a journey of self, you know, a journey of leadership. But what does that mean? For me, it's about service. And it's really, no matter where I am, what I'm called upon to do, I think actually I was naturally born a change agent. So that whole idea of service is also to say, what does that mean? And also the disruptor. So this Chief Hassling Officer comes from the tech side, or the journey that I've embarked on leading up to where I am today. And at the heart of everything I do is a sense I'm grounded through the values that I grew up with. So it's that old saying, charity begins at home, our values become who we are. And Mark, actually, in everything, when I look back now, who I am and what I've done, I come back to that as my North Star.
So tell us a little bit about where you're from, your family, a little bit about that.
So I'm South African, but in an interesting way, I was born and raised in exile, born in Uganda, grew up in Kenya, which is why there's a Kenyan influence. And then at 17, found myself in Canada, actually, in your space of the world.
Yeah.
As a 17-year-old, having received a scholarship for the United World Colleges. And the United World Colleges, there are about 18 of those now, but it was Lester B. Pearson College in Canada. And what's special about United World Colleges is I landed, not having left the country or left the continent, to a place with 63 countries represented at Lester B. Pearson. And thereafter, did a fantastic, I had 2 years, did an international baccalaureate. I guess that was the beginning of many footsteps as a change agent that you see today. When you're in a school that promotes international peace and understanding, at the tender age of 17, as teenagers, you're dealing with global issues and world issues and the self and the hormones of the self at the same time. During my 2-year period, we saw the end of we saw the release of Nelson Mandela as a teenager at the time, the end of the Berlin Wall. So you can imagine the emotions and engagement on politics. In the year that I went, I arrived to find another South African, Nick Doers, who ended up being also the editor of the Mail and Guardian locally and has worked with the Hindustan in India. But the point there, Nick was the white South African. I arrived from exile representing South Africa as a Black South African woman. And in fact, not really representing South Africa. I arrived on what they called at the time the United Nations passport. It was a blue travel document that said stateless. I still have it. I still have it. Meaning in that. And and that journey led me to Trent University as well. But what's important about Canada and being born and raised in exile, I always knew no matter what happened, I'd come back home. So I'm proudly back and rooted in South Africa, where I've been since 1995. And when I describe myself as a change agent, I do believe in everything I've done, whether it's in the corporate world to what I'm doing now. It's been all about the responsibility of purpose and the responsibility as a woman, as a Black woman, as a South African, as an African. So that lives with me every day in what I do.
Yeah, it's amazing, but I don't hear any Canadian accent at all, or you haven't said A at all, or anything like that. You didn't pick up any of that?
I told you I'm very, well, I think what I did pick up was this whole concept of thank you kindly. I find the Canadians are the only ones who, no matter what, in the lift and stuff, they're always thanking you. So thank you kindly, Mark, for having the opportunity to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, we're very polite, and we're known to be the country that says sorry more than anybody in the world. It's amazing.
And really good people, but amazing people.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of my country, and even though I'm Canadian and American, so that's interesting. Tell us a little bit more, if you can, on if there's somebody young growing up. I mean, how did that work, that you got to that point to go there and get that experience?
That's interesting because the only way to describe it is somewhere must have been in the journey of purpose, because by flukes, there was a little newspaper article, I was always curious and reading, and I came across at the bottom of the classifieds, it would have been this call for applications for this very prestigious United World Colleges, which I then took to my school to look into, and of course I was bold enough to apply, and I must say I did apply very bravely, not knowing. First of all, I knew geographically where Canada was, but I didn't even know how I'd get there for a start. But more important, how I'd have the conversation with my parents about it. So I used the school and the headmistress to help me put in the application, and with a simple attitude of what's the worst case that could happen, that I don't get through, and if I do, I'm 17, I'm curious, and it sounded exciting because it was advertised as an exciting place. And usually in country for United World Colleges, there's typically a local selection committee that manages that. Mm-hmm. And somehow my application, because of the information that I provided, didn't actually go through the local selection committee. I got calls to be interviewed because I had the stateless passport. So I wasn't fitting in the puzzle of where I belong. But I think there was a curiosity around being a refugee, but in East Africa, being of interest. You have to send in all your academics, the usual application process for any schools for scholarship. The interview process came through the school, so the headmistress put herself as a reference. I got a call from the school, got all the details, and the final section was the consent from parents, which is a difficult one. I had to get my headmistress to engage in that as well, because the second then call, we realized that I was getting closer to a yes, and when the yes finally came through, the big decision had to be made of, okay, so now we actually need to get parental consent and get you to Canada. But the rest is history. So it was the curiosity of a 16-year-old at the time, whose family and entire being was mainly around education. I like to tell everyone, my parents may not have given me a lot. They may have been quite humble, but they were very strict about the one gift they would give us all, and my sibling was education. So the curiosity to learn and the curiosity to search for something different came from a home where the only gift and the first thing that we knew would give us a sense of hope and purpose going forward was to secure a great education.
Yeah, that's so inspiring and influential. For people to know, especially with, like we talked about, elections and everything going on now, how important it is to just learn about other people and vice versa, and embrace diversity. Not to sound all the cliches, but just learn about each other, and that gives us all more energy, more power to do great things. It's taken decades, it seems, for leaders of companies to realize that aligning themselves with social impact is actually good for business. and it's actually good for getting great talent, because now the best talent wants to only go to a company, work with leaders where they do make a difference, where they do have purpose, where they are doing something, and they want to make money at the same time. You can make money and do good at the same time. So as you mentioned, your whole life from early teens, you've been involved in, and then career, you've been involved in broadcasting, insurance, consulting, technology. It's really cool. But the common thread that I've seen is your need to serve, you need to make a difference, you need to care about people. So how did you know that caring about people would be the important foundation for you to do well in business, and just differentiate you as one of the leaders who care, if you will?
And the leaders who care, first of all, Mac, that I think that's a brilliant construct that you came with and the show. And I got quite excited in our first conversation, because the caring part is not just about an ad hoc, it's not an event. It's a journey. It's a process of who you are. It's a process of self-discovery as well. I've touched on my own humble beginnings and my sense of curiosity. The foundations of where I am and who I am today come from the basic value system of understanding that we live in an ecosystem where I am because you are, and we are because together we get there. Across the African continent, there are various terminology around that, whether it's Ubuntu in South Africa, or whether it's making sure when the concept of a child is raised by a village. So the idea of a community and the idea of getting all your resources together and supporting each other is something I grew up with. I touched on briefly about not knowing how to get to Canada. One of the things with a scholarship is when you arrived, everything was covered, and you got the pocket money that you worked for. But what was difficult and what you need to find yourself was initially to get that ticket to get there. That ticket of mine that's one-way ticket that got me to the school came from a village, came from a community. So once a decision was made and everybody was confused, where's this Canada? How are you going to get there? And being raised by parents who looked to the future and hope and said, if you're going to get an education somewhere else, that's fantastic, we need to get you there. And it was aunties and uncles and neighbors and friends and teachers and the same headmistress that pulled together. And one of the emotional moments was going to the airport and looking back, and I must have been close to 30 people that come to the airport to see me off. And it's a sense, I was being sent off by community. I was being sent off by people who care. So when I arrived as a 17-year-old, already that was the probably the best gift that I received. And I arrived in an environment that had other 17-year-olds from all over the world who came from different circumstances. All of us had challenges to bear with, had come from, it didn't matter whether it was first world or third world countries at the time, or second economies, first economies. The solutions of being human, the solutions and the problems of the world, we tried to solve that together collectively. We tried to solve the political issues in the world. We tried to solve the social issues. I arrived on the first day, there was already this sense of what's going to happen. There's a Black South African woman, there's a white South African young man that has come as well. And as we walked into the day room, the first day around the cocktails, I arrived, there was a silence in the room and everybody's watching and waiting. And the humanity of who we are, 17-year-olds, walked to each other, said, hi, I'm Audrey, hi, I'm Nick, I'm also from South Africa. And Nick Dawes today is still what I call him a brother. He's my brother from another mother. And that's a 17-year-old. So, it doesn't, and Nick's children are my children, and my children are his. So from a business, if you translate that further into the corporate journey in the corporate world, we don't make decisions on our own. And the care part comes in always asking yourself the question, or I've always asked myself the question, no matter what platform I'm on, how does the decision that I'm making right now impact on others? And others could be your shareholders, could be the customer. And in fact, the starting point being the customer, who's the end consumer? So you talk about broadcasting, who's the end consumer from a broadcasting point of view, which means what are the ethics, what are the governing decisions, what's the strategy we need to put out there, who's actually consuming the product? If you look at insurance, it's to say, are we developing products that can stand any test of time around the idea of solving for the problem that we're putting forward? If you're looking at financial services and banking, financial inclusion is very close to my heart. It's something that I have lived and managed. And the reason it is, I do believe that access to finance and access to funding changes lives.
Sure.
You can provide access to one person, but you can change 10 lives just by a single decision. So that whole journey, Mark, and I'm trying to weave it in to show you that even in leadership, for a lot of us, we have to in order to care, you almost have to look in the mirror and constantly ask the question, where am I, where have I come from? And from an African construct, the question always is, whose child are you? And that comes from the brand and the family name that I carry. So whose child I am means that I also have ancestors that I need to almost be accountable to. And in asking myself that question, no matter how tough the decisions were, at the end of the day, even if I'm standing on an island on my own and everybody's against that decision, I know I can safely say that I've made the right decision because I've thought through all the issues that impact others, not just me. And at the end of the day, if somebody looks at me and says, but whose child is she? And they go back to who my father is and my grandfather, I'll say, aha, we understand.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I could visualize you looking back as you're getting on the plane to see the people in the village and the hope you gave them and the joy you probably gave them to get that hope of what you're going to learn and bring back and everything. It's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, I could feel it when you were talking about it. So and Maya Angelou is one of my favorite people. I don't know if you ever heard of Maya Angelou at all.
Also one of my favorite people, and forever, just my 50th, my children did the poem for me, Phenomenal Woman. So I'm forever indebted to her lessons that she's left behind.
Yes, but it always, my favorite quote is, well, most people will forget what you say, most people forget what you've done, but they will always remember how you made them feel. And
Yeah.
it's brilliant. So you just made me feel, and I love feeling. So that was really good.
And when I say village, it's not literally the whole village. But what I'm saying is that the concept of community,
right.
the concept of whoever it is, family and friends. So it was family, friends, neighbors, teachers, well-wishers. How's that? Part of caring. And when you lead through caring, you constantly, not sure what happened.
We're good.
Are you still good?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, I say when you lead through caring, the concept of having a foundation also helps you make those tough decisions. So that village or that construct of a village or community will carry you through the tough times as well. Not physically, but you know they're there when you're making those decisions.
And it makes you be responsible because you're keeping the legacy. You got to keep it alive. So it reminds me of my grandparents who were from Kiev, Russia, or Kiev, Ukraine, I guess, whatever. And they would always say with the accent, as long as you have your health, that's the most important thing. They would say, and then education was the second.
Wow.
And so I want to get your thoughts because there's Mother Nature is not a happy camper right now. We've got COVID, we've got wildfires here, we've got racial justice finally hitting the tipping point, hopefully for dramatic change now. You name it. There's all sorts of things going on around the world all at one time. Do you see in your business and your people you work with and just in general, do you see quote unquote an awakening, if you will, of what's really important out there?
That's it. I think the answer is yes. And what is more important is no longer what we described it to be important. So the fear around the virus, the fear around our health, as you mentioned, your grandparents, has become top of mind. So the idea and the construct of health and managing health is top of mind. But what is interesting is communities or the sense of understanding what's important, the sense of family, the decisions that matter around people, being aware and truly present of the surroundings that you're in. In our environment, in a country and a continent where there are huge disparities, not dissimilar to, you've mentioned some of other countries as well. I was so overwhelmed by the amount of care that came out. So whether it was our communities coming together to feed, whether it was communities coming together to look after caregivers, children, whether it was families that reunited, be it through technology, because there was a time where most of us were not even able to be together. So the appreciation of the things that we took for granted, whether it's innovations around managing supply and procurement, innovations around new business models that emerge. So whether it's around the economy, the idea of procuring locally is an important thing that emerged.
Right.
And sadly, the awareness that actually, from an entrepreneurial point of view, the small and medium entrepreneurs became important. The idea and the construct of who's important, for example, in a hospital, the idea that the janitors and the cleaners are probably top of the hierarchy in an era of COVID. The person who's making sure that the environments were clean and safe were probably, in my mind, and will continue to be seen as that first line of defense. So they become visible. And that visibility that was created became a visibility that emerged in boardrooms and discussions in boardrooms, the visibility that hit our airwaves, whether it's from the presidents or ministers speaking about the daily statistics around COVID. The first line in terms of all the healthcare providers, we became aware of nurses, we became aware of cleaners, we became aware of the importance of caregivers in old age homes. So I think from an economic point of view, we are probably at a point now where the idea of caring has to be part of the conversations, not just around profit. And in fact, if you care, the profits will follow, because if you care, you will be judged by that service. And if we think about who is going to win coming out of this, all the organizations that put their people first, despite the challenges, and putting your people first doesn't necessarily mean you, in some cases, you are not able to keep all jobs. In some cases, people lost jobs, but how they lost those jobs matters. The conversations that took place, the understanding of the predicament around the business, and those that remained behind, the effort they'll put into almost nurture the organization as if it belonged to them. So from an economic standpoint, I think the humanity of the crisis is what will prevail as a winning element of it. The pain of loss and the pain of the fear that followed, in a way, will also be a challenge that we continue to have. But the difference is we'll listen to each other more. We'll engage with each other more. We have connected via technology, and we probably feel and connect more than we would have face to face. We lived in a fast-paced environment. And in fact, from a social dynamics point of view, we'll appreciate our families more. We'll appreciate our friends more. Right. The quality of the conversations will change, because back to your grandparents' analogy around health and education, we're going to be first and foremost worried about how you are. When I get on a call now, I first find out, are we all okay? Is the family still okay? From a country and geography and a regional point of view and a global point of view, the world has become one village. And the world has become a village because we've realized through our fear and through the things we cannot control, we still don't know what this virus is. And it's still lurking, and we all are hoping and waiting for the vaccine. But we can't pinpoint where it is and what it is. But what we know we can do is we can keep each other safe. And I can look at you through the screen and I can say, how are you doing? And I really mean it. I can check in on you when I'm looking at statistics across the world. I can remember to pick up the phone and call a friend in Italy, which I did. Coming from a global background, a global construct, I can engage with my friends all over the world. And it's no longer a question of an ad hoc engagement. I will call you when I can. I am busy. If we could change one word in our vocabulary and our lifestyles after this, is that word busy. I'll call you later. And I think after the crisis, we'll all stop using that word busy. When you receive a call from somebody you haven't heard from in a long time, you'll genuinely smile from inside and have a conversation. That's the difference.
No, it's spectacular. You know, my aunt in Montreal is 92. Every 3 months, she tells me I'm 91 and a half, I'm 91 and 3/4, now I'm 92. And I said, Auntie Nancy, that's like what 8-year-olds say when they want to get older. She's keeping track that every moment's precious. But to your point, is technology because she said, how great was it when we were all in the same town together and we got together? And I said, it's a different world, but how great is it, she said, that at least I can see you now on this technology that she's got as an older person, that she understands to do it. So I think you're 1,000,000% right. We've learned that we've got to try to be more connected, even if it's through technology and stuff. So it's spectacular. Tell me a little bit more about SystemLogic and what you exactly do and how it all fits with this whole thing we're talking about being leaders who care.
My journey to Systemic Logic was a journey of learning through corporate. So Systemic Logic is a global digital data and innovation company, proud to say it's women-owned, mainly focusing in the fintech space and the tech space. So it's fintech as well as, in fact, the new one is meditech, technology innovations in the medical field, or agri-tech, agricultural field. But the journey started really right from the beginning of my corporate journey, which was, if you look at the combination of whether it's broadcasting, insurance, and banking, financial services, I found myself in spaces where, and if anyone was listening, I'd say to them, whatever you're doing today, learn. Because every job I've had before has gotten me to this place. It's almost an unconscious, intentional journey. Why is that? My journey through the corporate world at age 34, being on an executive team, or rather, I don't know what they call it, the boards, right at the top governing area in a company where was close to 50 years, where they never really had a woman, let alone a black person in that position, and listening on and learning from the best in the industry, and that was in insurance. And that journey of learning there, I recall a conversation where we were talking about procuring technology from, in fact, we're getting resources from India. And I looked around and I thought to myself, surely we can procure some of the services locally. And this was in 2005. And if I fast forward where we are today in 2020, already at that point in time, I didn't realize it, but I remember thinking to myself, what I do really want to do is not really find myself in corporate for another 25, 30 years. I want to find myself in a place where I can create jobs. 2005 was 10 years, 11 years after the birth of our democracy. At that point in time, we were all in a phase where we're rebuilding. We're rebuilding for the change, we're rebuilding for who we are, and we still are. We're a very young democracy in South Africa, and we continue to be. So in insurance and banking, I took on roles that evolved everything from strategy to HR to marketing to running inclusive banking, which is a profit and loss. And collectively, that taught me how to run a business. But that didn't get me to my passion. I realized, possibly now you fast track by 2013, 2013 is when I actually think I realized my calling fully. And that was after driving a business from a loss making to a positive margins, to winning an award, a BAI, a Pinnacle Award in societal impact and innovation. And that was the business where we took 1.5 million customers and grew it to 7 million customers, inclusive banking, and using technology, innovated and found and were able to open banking accounts and create banking products, savings and lending products for communities, and finding them in their townships, using and employing people from within the communities, because we did that in the 11 different languages that we have in the country. So it wasn't even about the banking product. It was about the journey to get there of financial inclusion. It was about the realization. I talked about being present and seeing. It was about realizing who our customers were. And at the time, my customer was the man in the blue overalls, so that's a construction person. It was the nurse. It was the teacher. And we had to reframe. I had to run the business and help the team reframe our thinking. We had to map it in a way that was relevant. We had to go in and use devices in the community so that on a Saturday or in the evening, they can go in and transact in their local spatzer shop or their local community shop. And the reason for that is a lot of my customers in that category who are actually the main market. It's not, inclusivity wasn't saying, let's bring on a customer base that is in the lower end. That was the core, the main market, the core of the population. And for most of them, during their lunch hours, typically when they would go and queue in the branches to try and do any form of banking. And you have to understand, for most of them, they leave home at 4 in the morning to get to work on time. at 7 or 8 a.m. So you're already eating their lunch hour to try and access them as a banking institution. So the innovation around finding them where they are, the innovation around creating opportunities for them to bank anytime. And I know we've moved even forward because everything is now digital. We can all bank from the comfort of our home. But so that shift in the innovation using technology, I found my sweet spot. I found the sweet spot of saying, I need to be out there. And as we won the award, I knew it was time to go. And I knew I didn't want to be another corporate because I now collectively learned everything. And I took my vesting shares at the time and I bought into a company that was being run a particular way, and the rest is history. But I found my sweet spot because I could now be in a space where I could innovate and combine technology to change lives and create further inclusivity, but also use that platform to create jobs and experiment. In one of the many roles I had was as a director or human resources director. So suddenly I could experiment on things around how you recruit, the type of individuals I want to bring on board. And I have a team of people who are diverse. If you know anything about developers and techies, it's a different breed. I'm a real old person in my environment, in terms of the youth and the requirements and the diversity of it all. And it's empowering the individual around the output. So I run a model where I say to my team, literally, you need to write your check. You need to tell me what your bonus is because it's based on your output. So it's experimenting even in human practices within the organization, but at the same time, it's also experimenting in the service offered to the client. So with all our clients, I'm very clear, I'll take the risk, you'll take the gain, but more important, if you don't like it and we haven't produced a process or product you're liking, we will take that back and we'll redo it at risk. And it's that whole running a business through relationships, through trust, through care. And it's not about profits only. It's not about really the new tech and the new innovation. So I would argue that I got to where I am through a self-discovery of learning, self-discovery in the work environment. There are two types of self-discovery. There's your spiritual and emotional self-discovery, but there's also your intellectual, and I don't want to call it career because it's an intellectual journey. You have to self-disrupt. I self-disrupt. And once you get to that point of your sweet spot, the only thing that would have kept me away from doing what I'm doing right now would have been the fear of failure. But you know what? I just dived in and I said, so what's the worst thing that could happen? I fail with my own business, but guess what? I'm still young enough and bold enough to just go back to corporate if I have to.
I love that because you said the same thing about going to Canada. What's the worst thing that could happen? and it's awesome. You know, life's short, as they say, and well, you know, you hit my sweet spot, and that's you're definitely one of the leaders who care, and it's super. You know, I live in LA, so we're always thinking in terms of you know, in a movie or something, leave them wanting more so you can do a sequel. So I think we may need to do a sequel on this, but so super. You know, learning from you, hearing from you, getting inspired by you, and just thank you so much for sharing and and you definitely belong on this Leaders Who Care series. So thank you.
No, thank you. And I'm waiting for you to confirm your arrival date. You know, there's a lot to discover. And I'm proud we Pan-African, not just South African. There is just so much beauty to share and actually so many leaders who care because it's that Ubuntu, it's that village I talked about. You are because I am, not the other way around.
Well, I'm feeling we're going to work together to make some really good things happen. So look out, Africa, and look out, world.
Good luck with the elections and everything else. Keep the energy positive for yourself as you do.
Absolutely, you too. Hey, thanks again.
Thank you so much.